we actually took temperature measurements just from 1 hour post-mortem. So that's 1 hour after exsanguination and everything. And then we chilled until 22 hours is when we actually pulled our temp probes out.
Hello, meat folks. Welcome back to the MeatsPad podcast. This is your humble and happy host, Phil Bass, coming to you from St. Paul, Minnesota, with a few folks that I ran into the other day who they're doing some research on a topic that is near and dear to my heart. And I'll tell you, I got to tell you a few things. First and foremost, I've been researching heavyweight carcasses for a long time, but in the beef world. And I have with us Kaitlin, Richey, and Khalil, Jallaq from University of Illinois, the other UI, but doing some research on big pigs, being in Illinois. Okay, well that makes perfect sense. So let's talk a little bit about that and share a little bit about what you're looking for with these big piggies.
Yeah, so the Big Pig Project came about. Some of our predecessors did big pigs in the industry, and so we decided to try it again with bigger pigs.
Okay.
And so our max weight was 144 kg carcass.
Okay,
so,
kilograms. So,
yes, kilograms.
So that's, what was that, 320 pounds? Okay, so that's a pretty good size pig carcass.
Yeah, it's pretty decent size. So that was our very heavy pigs. And so we then had some heavy pigs, which were 116, 126.
Okay.
Kigs as well, and then we had some average, which were 99 to I think 109. And so they were just a little indicative of the heavier end of what we see in commercial today.
Okay.
So we did a lot of things. We did chilling, we did alternative fabrication, traditional fabrication, and then we did some novel cuts sensory work, which is what Khalil did. So
okay, so oh boy, this is fun. So there's a lot going on with this. Just to warn everyone, this is about to become a 3-hour podcast. And no, that's not true. But so I definitely want to learn a little bit more about this. To give some reference for those who either aren't part of the large scale commercial pig processing or aren't part of pig processing at all, what is an average size pig these days, a commercial size pig?
Yeah, so I would say probably commercial is probably about 97 kgs for a carcass weight.
97 kilograms?
I mean, that could give or take a couple up 3, down 3, but that's pretty much about average.
Okay. So we're talking a little over 200-pound carcass weight. Yeah. Okay, very good. All right. So and you're looking at animals that are adding a whole another 120 pounds. So this is
big stuff.
These are big. Yeah. I mean, so tell me a little bit. Let's start at the beginning then. Let's talk about the chilling process that you mentioned. What did you discover?
Yeah, so we discovered that big pigs chill very slow.
No kidding.
Yeah, which is kind of what you expect anyways. The only novel thing we kind of did is we took shoulder temperature decline, and so they actually chilled pretty similar to our loins, but still intermediate to our hams and our loins. Okay. But if we think about it, our shoulders are kind of like our hams in some aspects, so they do chill a little slower than that loin. But I was like, other than that, just the heavier they get, the slower they chill. So that was kind of seen across the industry too. So this was a conventional chilling system versus like a blast chill.
Okay. So, conventional as in just normal air movement. You're not taking it to sub-freezing temperatures.
No, right. I think our cooler sits at like 30 degrees Celsius, and then we obviously have fans and everything.
Okay. So 3 degrees Celsius, we're looking at probably 30, what is that, 36, 37 degrees Fahrenheit for those out there. And like you said, a very traditional chill, which is totally acceptable. I mean, that's what you have to work with. And it's still going to be very relative in many cases. So tell me, how much longer did it take to chill one of those big pig carcasses? What were you targeting?
I was like, so we actually took temperature measurements just from 1 hour post-mortem. So that's 1 hour after exsanguination and everything. And then we chilled until 22 hours is when we actually pulled our temp probes out.
Okay, so it was continuously reading the whole time.
Yes, I have temperature measurements for every minute that they were in the cooler.
This is big data, guys.
Yeah, so it was a lot of data.
Okay.
But yeah.
So when did you hit your target temperature then?
So our loins definitely hit that ambient temperature is what we compared everything to. So our ambient temperatures, we had some probes sitting out, hanging on carcasses, sitting in the coolers. So our loins definitely hit our temperatures a lot faster. I would say probably, I think it was like 12 hours post-mortem they hit that temperature. And then at the point that we had pulled our temperature probes, our hams had not gotten to our ambient temperature yet. But they were still in the cooler after we had pulled the probes, so at that point.
But really, at this point, we're just trying to make sure the surface is chilled, and you know that's the important part. And what do you think? So, well, I guess we can get more into the physiology later. But so what was the next thing that you looked at and you measured?
So the next thing would be our traditional and our alternative fabrication.
Okay, tell me about that.
Yeah. So I was like, do you wanna?
I can talk a little bit about this, but I was not part of the party. I came a little bit later in the game. So we had, right, carcasses have two sides. We cut one down in the traditional method, right, like followed all the NEMP guidelines, and then I think that was the left half.
Our left sides
were,
are, traditional.
And then the right side that we followed, was it 4th and 5th rib break?
Yeah, so we changed our shoulder break a little bit. So we typically do a 2nd, 3rd rib break in our cutout process at U of I, and then this one we actually lengthened that shoulder up a little bit and took that 4th and 5th. We pulled some alternative muscles out of our shoulder, so we took our serratus ventralis and our triceps brachii, and then we also we broke our hams down the same, and then we took our boneless loins and our bellies like we do on our traditional side. Our goal with the alternative fabrication though was, can we find another cut on these big pigs that is going to be a center of the plate protein?
Yeah.
Is there something to replace a pork chop?
Yeah.
Because our pigs are getting bigger, obviously, so their muscles are getting bigger.
Yeah.
So is there something out there that's more desirable?
We also wanted to see where the pig was getting bigger, right? If we were getting these way out of proportionate, right? If pigs were getting big, but only in the hams.
Or are they just getting long?
And
yeah.
No, we found that they were getting big all around.
All the way around.
Right? Like their muscles it was all relatively big.
Relatively proportional.
Yeah.
Okay. How big were the loin eyes on the really, really big ones? Can you recall?
I cannot recall.
That's okay. Were they definitely bigger than?
Yeah, so between our average, our heavies, and our very heavies, the loin eye area definitely got bigger. We also had more back fat. However, they were proportional to the growth of also that loin eye area. So it's not like as they get heavier, they're getting fatter. They're just getting bigger.
Well, I'd be curious to maybe go back to even on the live side and kind of track back some of this stuff and see, are these more efficient animals? Can they grow, like you said, proportionally? It's not that they're adding a ton more back fat, maybe, but they're growing proportionally in a similar setting than our traditional pigs. So maybe they have something to offer, not the ones in the freezer, of course, but something to offer to the genetics in the future. So I'm intrigued by the 4th and 5th rib break, and I'll tell you why. This is a European style break. Okay, so. Tell me more. What did you find?
So we did find that with our serratus ventralis and our triceps brachii, the weights that we did get on those, which I can't recall exact weights, but they were actually pretty significant to the average size of a pork chop. And then we eventually ate those down the road. But we also, a big concern I know with like commercial industry is you start lengthening that shoulder, you get a shorter loin, you're getting a smaller belly. So you're losing that bacon in those pork chops. But we actually found that even though we were shortening those, they were still similar in size as the pig had gotten bigger. So it's not really like you're losing product by increasing that shoulder size.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, which I'm pulling the muscles out was great.
You lose, right? You lose loin and you lose belly as a percent of the carcass, but not in the raw pounds.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And this was our lab mate. One of our lab mate shows, right? This was his bread and butter.
Yeah.
This is what he worked on specifically.
Well, and what's really cool is if we can take these innovative cuts and get just as much or more per pound than a belly, guys, we're in business here.
Yeah.
I mean, that's really cool. Now, the paradigm of applying this in the United States would be very challenging, obviously, but it sounds like we might be onto something here. That's really, really neat. So did you guys personally get a chance to try these cuts?
Yeah, so I was like, I ate all the taste panels that
Okay.
we had. Khalil's the cooker, so he
Okay.
cooked all of them.
Okay.
I get to cook,
You're the
I get
chef.
to serve.
Okay,
yeah.
But I don't do much of the eating.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
What'd you experience? I'm excited about the serratus ventralis. One of my favorite cuts. One of my favorite muscles, to be honest. And so on the beef animal, just to remind our listeners out there, that's our traditional short ribs. And it's what we make Denver steaks out of. So what do we got on a piggy?
The SV is cool.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it is
It's,
cool.
so it's similar in size to the loin. And I think we threw around, the term we coined in the lab was the LaCroix of beef.
The LaCroix.
Yeah.
Because it's dark, kind of looks like a steak. And when you eat it, it's got almost a beefy flavor.
Okay.
Yeah.
And it's
Really?
it's definitely more flavorful than the loin. It had more marbling than the loin. It was as tender as the
Yeah.
loin, right? And it's a cool piece of meat. The SVs and the TBs they're
Yeah. Well, okay, and the TB, that's the triceps brachii. That's your triceps muscle, arm muscle. But I would imagine, yeah, it probably is still a pretty good cut because I know it is on the beef carcass.
Yeah, it was actually like, it was kind of shocking. You'd be sitting there and you'd like, okay, that kind of tastes like a loin. Then you get when you're like, did they serve me beef steak or is
No
this
way.
really pork? Like, it actually has a decent amount of flavor when you're looking at those shoulder cuts.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, how cool.
I was like, we also ate some ham.
Yep.
We ate a ham cut too. So
Yeah,
Okay.
we looked at the SV, the TB, and then the semimembranosus out of the ham.
Okay, some membranosus, that's the inside leg. Yep. Mm-hmm.
And it was pretty comparable to the loin.
Yeah.
It was a bit bigger and wasn't quite as tender. Had pretty similar flavor levels. Not as flavorful as the TB or the SV.
Yeah.
But pretty comparable to the loin.
Yeah.
I think as a general rule, we did taste panels and our trained taste panels. It kind of, I think the vibe was that the LD was probably still favorable over the SM, but that SV and the TB was definitely a curveball.
So the shoulder cuts were almost superior to the loin.
If you look at tenderness, you look at flavor, you look at juiciness. Yeah.
Wow.
It was more tender. They were darker.
Yeah.
They were a little more juicy. And you saw that pretty consistent with we ran shear force on them.
Uh-huh.
So they had some, in general, lower shear force values.
Wow. How exciting is that? That's so cool. Well, and we almost have to think about it that this is timing is everything sometimes in science. And when we were developing some of those different cuts out of the beef carcass, pigs weren't this big yet. Now they are. Now the opportunity is there. It's not a challenge, it's an opportunity. We talk about that here on MeatsPad all the time, that the farmer gets paid by the pound. So they need to make these animals bigger eventually. And so it's our job as meat scientists to figure out what to do with those things and can we add value to them. And it sounds like you may have.
And,
It's pretty darn cool.
I think part of this is we're trying to make sure we're not jumping the gun, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like all animals are getting bigger at this point, and we're like, especially in poultry right now. I've seen a couple posters today about chickens that get big run into issues, right?
Mm-hmm.
Woody breast or spaghetti meat.
Yeah.
And we have not seen that in these
Mhm.
big pigs.
That's good.
So
That's a great sign.
yeah.
Okay. And then what else did you do with those carcasses?
So they did we made 3-piece hams out of
Okay.
them. And then they also did some bacon we made some bacon
Oh,
out of
how'd the
them.
bellies turn out?
They're actually pretty good.
Yeah?
They're definitely, as they get heavier, there is a little bit more fat.
A
But
little
they
bit more.
still
That's all right. I like that.
they
stuff.
still
Tastes
have
good.
a decent amount of lean. So yeah, we analyzed a lot of primary and secondary lean on those, but definitely get a little fattier.
Okay.
But I personally didn't eat any bacon, so I don't know how it tasted, but
Yeah.
I'm going to assume bacon's good anyways. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
All right, so let's get real sciencey here. Physiologically, did you observe anything different in those carcasses after they were chilled? And what I'm referring to is like pH and color of the lean.
So actually, we saw when we came to loin measurements, we saw no differences in our ultimate pH.
Okay.
We didn't see any differences in our L star, A star, B star, and no differences in shear force or cook loss. cooked to 63 and 71 degrees Celsius.
Which is pretty warm.
Yeah, so 145 and 160 in Fahrenheit.
Yeah.
And no, they actually, even cooked to 160, they were still pretty tender.
Wow.
They weren't bad. So it was actually a big thing. We were looking at like other papers that have been done. We were like, we'll probably see a couple differences, but we actually saw like you can get pigs pretty big and you're not affecting your product at all, especially when it comes to the loin. What
about the hind leg? Did you notice any color differences in the center of that hind leg?
Not that I can recall that we saw any differences. We did have, I will say, on our semi-tendinosis, goodness gracious, for the light and the dark, we did see some differences in our yellowness values. Okay. Which, if you can tell me what B star really means.
B star, yeah. So, and what they're referring to, and we have some previous podcasts that our listeners go back to and learn more about color scoring and colors and things like that. But L star being the lightness of the meat, A star being, in short, the redness of the meat, and then B star being the yellowness. And we see the color in a three-dimensional subject. It's actually kind of a three-dimensional subject. And yellowness, that's kind of a hard one to explain. Could have something to do with connective tissue. Could have something to do with, something that's hard for us to pick up in our eyes. Yeah. But the spectrophotometer, the colorimeters that we use can pick that subtle differences up. And that can lead to differences maybe in ultimately how we see something. But as you're saying, it seems like it was rather minimal as far as just subjectively looking at it.
Yeah, so, that's what we always say in our lab. We're like, we don't know what yellowness
we still don't know what yellowness
is. We need more of like what it actually is doing and what we're actually seeing and how that compares. So.
Sure. Yeah, that's all right. We always like to ask our guests, how did you get into the meat sciences? So tell me a little bit about that.
I'll go ahead. So I was pre-vet for a while in undergrad. Right? I did my bachelor's at the University of Findlay in Ohio. My senior year, I was just kind of messing around. I took a food safety class. We had a new professor that was a meat scientist. I took her food safety class. It was cool. Yeah. And then my buddy was taking her advanced meat science class in the spring. And I was like, oh, we get to make sausage. Yeah. Sounds like a good last class, right? And I took it, and it clicked. Yeah. And then I spent the summer kind of nerding out, reading a lot of books, talking to different professors. And I got put into contact with Dr. Dilger and Dr. Harsh, and I visited, and everything kind of fell in place. Yeah. And if it wasn't for wanting to learn how to make sausages with my best friend, I don't know if I'd be here, but I have absolutely no regrets. It's probably the best decision I've ever made.
Excellent. Yeah. And you have some amazing advisors to work with there, Dr. Annie Dilger and Dr. Bailey Harsh. Yeah. How about you, Kaitlyn?
So I kind of was similar to Khalil. I went to Clemson University for my undergrad, and I was like, oh, I'm going to be a reproductive physiologist. Okay. This is going to be great. And then I was like, oh,
how's that going?
Yeah, it's not going that great. So I actually took a meat processing class at Clemson, and I was like, oh, this is, I eat 3 meals a day. I eat protein at every meal. This actually might be a good career path. And so I went on the Google Scholar dive and found all the meat information, and I just reached out and I found the University of Illinois, and I was like, Dr. Dilger and Dr. Harsh, they're pretty cool. This research they do is pretty awesome. I love pigs. I've worked with pigs my whole life, so I'm like, this is pretty great. And so I have no regrets either. I love meat science. Yeah. So.
And similar colors to Clemson too, right?
Yeah, somewhat.
Similar colors to Findlay.
Oh gosh.
Yeah. It was meant to be.
It was easy. Yeah, easy transition.
I don't know how I stumbled into where I am because I don't even eat pork.
No.
Right?
Yeah, right.
I had no pig experience, and then boom, here I am.
It's fun though. Works and we can make sausage out of a lot of different creatures too. So absolutely. Well, guys, thank you so much. This has been a lot of fun. I can't wait to see where life takes you. Do you guys have plans for the future once you graduate with your master's degrees?
Yeah, so I actually defend my master's in a couple weeks, and I'm staying at the U of I for my PhD.
Good for you.
And then hopefully going to enter industry someday, but a couple years down the road.
Yeah.
I should hopefully defend sometime in the next year, and then I hope to stay also for a PhD.
Good for you.
And then I hope to end up in academics. Yeah. Got good teachers where the reason that I ended up where I am. So
Yeah.
I'd like to put some of that back into the world.
Well, those are definitely noble future plans, and I wish you guys the best. And we do need more folks going that route right now to continue the knowledge base and continue to grow the next round of pig fabricators or what have you, right? So, well, thank you so much again, and we'll be in touch.
Heck yeah.
Yeah, thank
All right.
you.
Thank you.
Yeah.